First, as we mentioned, she is live at this hearing being held by a House Judiciary Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security. Hi, Catherine. What's the latest?
Well, thanks, Patty. And I want to address that point in just a second. But dealing with the hearing this morning, I think there was really one moment that made everyone in that room pause. And it was when the father of Todd Beamer, one of the heroes of Flight 93 that went down in Pennsylvania, said the Justice Department saw the families as an irritant, that they simply got in the way of the administration's political objectives.
Let us be crystal clear. The families had no say, no voice, no champions inside the Holder Justice Department. We were ignored, tolerated, overlooked, and misled. When it was apparent that we did not support civilian trials for the war criminals who slaughtered our families as 200,000 troops risked their lives to fight the same enemy on the same battlefield, we were summarily dismissed from the process.
We asked for comment this morning from the Justice Department, and we were referred back to what the Attorney General said at that news conference yesterday, which is that he felt that justice could not be delayed any further for these families. I just wanted to pick up on a point, though, that you were discussing with your panel, which is one of the things that people are not talking about, which is that what we learned yesterday for the first time is that there was a sealed indictment for the 5 9/11 suspects that was handed up by a New York grand jury in December of 2009, and yet the administration, I would argue, because of the way they mishandled the rollout of this decision, never brought the 5 9/11 suspects into the Southern District of New York, and they in fact had an entire year to do so before these financial blocks were put in place by Congress. So I think it's a little bit more nuanced. I think that the administration saw the writing on the wall, if you will, that they're coming up to the 10th anniversary of 9/11. Politically, they could not afford to reach that anniversary and not have some kind of process in motion. And I think when you look at the timing, this announcement coming on the same day the president announced his re-election for 2012, this allows him, I think, politically to move more towards the center and make the argument that now that he's been in office, he sees that there is a place for these military commissions when he didn't as a candidate.
So, Catherine, one of the questions being raised now that it's going to go back to Guantanamo Bay is that of whether or not these suspects would be eligible for the death penalty. Where does that stand?
Well, that's an unresolved issue. I was in the courthouse in 2008. I want to say it was 2008 or early 2009 when Khalid Sheikh Mohammed indicated that the 5 men wanted to enter a guilty plea, and the judge said to him, "I can accept that plea." And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed said, "Well, if I plead guilty, will I get the death penalty?" And the judge said, "Well, actually, that's not exactly clear, Mr. Sheikh Mohammed." And he said, "Well, maybe I'll just hold on to that guilty plea for a while until you can come back to me," because one of his objectives here is to be martyred for this cause. And this very issue came up at the hearing this morning. Let's listen.
Oh. You can't plead guilty and then receive the death penalty?
Not in a commission. You can in federal court.
I see. So one of your problems is you want him to get the death penalty, and therefore we shouldn't have accepted that?
I don't like the death penalty, but in the case of these 5 alleged co-conspirators, the death penalty is on the table. If ever there was a case in which it would be appropriate, this is it.
I think the testimony of the witness this morning was a little bit more definitive. My understanding is that it's really ambiguous. It's an unknown, if you will. Typically, military commissions do not allow people to walk in, plead guilty, and then get the death penalty in that sentencing phase. So we're certainly in, sort of, to use a cliche, uncharted territory, not only in the use of these commissions, but also in terms of such a complex case like that of the 5 men.
Now, Catherine, you were at Attorney General Eric Holder's press conference yesterday where he announced this change. You were asking some questions. We heard you. Did he elaborate at all on his comment about rolling the dice?
I don't think he really did. We did a story about a month ago. We were, in fact, the only news organization, I would argue, that's really been following this story consistently over the last year and a half since the announcement that the Attorney General wanted to send the cases to federal court. And there was a sort of a curbside confrontation on Capitol Hill. Some of the 9/11 families were up there. It was late January, early February, and the Attorney General was just up on the Hill doing regular business, and they had this chance meeting. And what the families related to me is the Attorney General said, look, if you go to military commissions, this is, quote, like rolling the dice. And and that you're just going to have to trust me because I have more information than you do. And I felt yesterday at the news conference, I really didn't get a clear answer as to why back in February he told the families it was rolling the dice, and yet less than 2 months later he was now going to send the case into the commissions. I think the obvious or simple answer is that, as he said yesterday, he still really believes that federal courts are probably the right venue and that the military commissions are not the best venue. And to sort of support that point of view, what's clear not only from those on the left and those on the right, but there's agreement that whatever happens at the military commissions will be subject to a series of appeals that will probably end up taking that verdict to the Supreme Court itself. And you can make the argument that if it was in federal court, you might be able to cut a few years off that process.
All right, very interesting. Still many
More than
questions.
you ever needed to know, right?
No, we do need to know it. That's the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Catherine Herridge reporting live for us from that hearing in Washington.